Midday sits heavy on the Joint Tactical Operations Center near the Kuwait-Iraq border. Generators hum like distant surf, while an incoming warning speaker clicks through a test tone and then fades. Heat wavers over the concrete yard and turns the view beyond the T-walls into a mirage. Inside, fluorescent light chills the room, where maps glow and screens whisper status lines. No one reads aloud. Staff Sergeant Harper Cooper works at a corner station with quiet hands. She is United States Air Force. A former Tactical Air Control Party member, once qualified as a Joint Terminal Attack Controller. Now assigned as an admin, non-commissioned officer after a blast and a strict medical profile. People pass her desk and treat her as the paperwork sergeant who files and forwards. The reminders come often to stay within her lane. Do not transmit on operational nets. Do not assume control of air or fires. The table in front of her holds the day's special instructions pages. The airspace control order extract, and a printed slice of the rules of engagement. A PRC 117G sits on the rack within reach, but she leaves the handset alone. On the sideboard, a neat pace chart lists primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency frequencies in dry erase pen. She updated the presets at 7:15 a.m., then capped the marker and went back to the log without a word. Her notebook opens to a worn edge, where a folded 9-line card is taped inside the cover. The radio in the room gives a brief hiss of static that seems to settle into a steady cadence, as if promising future clarity when someone finally takes charge. Outside the open door, the heat shimmer swims over the concrete and blurs the vehicles on the far pad. Harper watches it for a second, then smooths a stack of spins pages and turns back to her list. She closes her eyes for a breath count of 4. In and out. Twice through until the chest tightness lets go. Papers align. Pens face the same direction. The handset remains on the cradle. She accepts the label that calls her just admin and lets it sit on the surface where it belongs. Behind it, her eyes scan routes, angles, and hazards, with a quiet tactical focus that asks for nothing and remembers everything. The midday rhythm holds steady inside the Joint Tactical Operations Center near the Kuwait-Iraq border. Fans push warm air while the generator hum sits under everything like a low drum. Harper Cooper moves through the room with a calm checklist mind and no wasted motion. She turns pages and lets the heat shimmer beyond the T-walls become background noise. She reviews the day's special instructions and the airspace control order and boxes out altitude blocks for close air support on call. Abort code for the day goes into the margin with a neat hand and a quiet nod. On the air picture board, she writes Hog 21 and Hog 22, expected on station in about 20 minutes. Then steps back to check spacing and flow. No one asks for this prep. Yet the picture becomes cleaner once it is there. Her pen traces the main supply route in southern Iraq in military grid reference system and marks the villages that sit close to the road. She adds no fire areas near schools and markets and draws a thin arrow for a safe egress if things go loud. Along the whiteboard edge, she writes pace and then primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, leaving the radios untouched. A PRC 117 Golf rests on its rack while the sipper monitor spits quiet alerts that rise and fall like tide. She catches a brief overlap between two nets and notes the exact moment in her log as 2:30 p.m. The whiteboard shows clean presets for each net and a small dot where link 16 or saddle relay can help if the primary collapses. A young non-commissioned officer pauses by her desk and nudges the folded 9-line card taped in her notebook and calls it a funny habit without meaning harm. Harper taps a soft pattern on the table that matches the 9-line and lets the moment pass. Outside, the concrete yard shivers in the heat and turns vehicles into wavering shapes. The room's radio static fades and then settles as if it hears itself and chooses to behave. Harper finishes the checks and caps her marker and sets her pen parallel to the notebook. She sits quiet and ready for close air support without needing to say a word. Midday heat presses on the Joint Tactical Operations Center near the Kuwait-Iraq border. The generator sets a steady floor of sound while desk fans push warm air across plastic map covers. An O3 officer in charge gives the day's assignments with clipped clarity, and the battle captain echoes the plan. Staff Sergeant Harper Cooper is placed at the admin station to maintain the log and monitor the SIPR terminal, while not transmitting on operational nets. The reminders land with a soft thud. Not a shooter. Stay in your lane. She nods once and turns to her work without reaching for a handset. The wall clock set to Zulu reads 2:30 p.m., and the room settles into its steady beat. The space carries the look of a unit that has done this for months. Status boards hang above the phones and show routes and checklists. A PRC 117 Golf rests on a rack with its cable dressed and tied. On the main display, a convoy icon walks along a main supply route in southern Iraq, while the air picture lists Hog 21, expected on station soon. Harper watches the map the way a pilot watches weather. She notes a village tight to the road and a power line that crosses a likely axis of fire. She traces 2 safe lanes for a pullback if things go loud. Her eyes move to the whiteboard where a clean pace list reads, Primary, Alternate, Contingency, and Emergency, and her hands stay folded. The phones buzz with short updates, and the SIPR window ticks out brief system alerts. The battle captain leans over the board and makes a note about spacing for the next hour. Harper marks the nearest open ground where smoke would pool and the direction a rotor wash might push it. She keeps the thought about a possible Type 1 control to herself, since enemy proximity would be the only reason to go that tight. She slides her notebook closer, and the corner of a folded 9-line card peeks from the inside cover. A breath in for 4 and out for 4 smooths the edge off her focus. Paper stacks square under her palm, and the pen lines up with the spine. She accepts the sidelined role and lets the room think of her as just admin, while a quiet readiness warms beneath the surface like a hot road shimmering in the sun. The rocket siren holds a long, mournful note that rattles the fluorescent covers and drives the Joint Tactical Operations Center into take-cover posture. Midday heat presses through the T-walls while helmets snap on and bodies crouch behind consoles. Almost at the same moment, a convoy icon on the map flashes, and the net erupts with troops in contact along a main supply route in southern Iraq. The lead vehicle sits disabled in a kill zone, while PKM and RPG fire crosses a dry alley and a suspected IED pins the rear. Primary net buckles under voices that stack instead of sequence. Situation reports break off mid-sentence, and readbacks come thin or missing. A hard pause opens like a cliff, where no one transmits, and then 3 people speak at once and step on each other. The noise feels louder than the siren that started it. The officer in charge. An O3. And the battle captain wrestle with rules of engagement. Positive identification. And collateral damage estimate, while a medical evacuation standby complicates airspace. The map shows a rotary track orbiting near the same corridor, and the risk of conflict grows by the minute. On a side panel, Hog 21, Flight of A-10 Charlie reports on station in an altitude block that matches the special instructions and the airspace control order. No one has cleared a joint terminal attack controller check-in, so the jets hold and wait. Forward JTAC at the scene fades in and out as terrain and buildings chew the signal. No one has pushed the alternate net, and the contingency path sits cold. A junior specialist reaches for a relay through SADL, or Link 16J voice, toward the Air Support Operations Center, but there is no single voice to coordinate. The room moves, but nothing aligns. Over the convoy net, a breathless report warns that enemy fighters are pushing close, and that a danger close call may be required if the line collapses. Friendlies are estimated 200 meters west of the road, and the tone says that number might shrink. The air picture steadies, and the ground picture shakes. The plan that looked perfect 10 minutes earlier unravels in half a minute, while static thickens in the room, and every face searches for one steady cadence that can bring the net back to order. The alarm still rings in the bones, and primary net crackles like dry brush in a furnace. Staff Sergeant Harper Cooper sets one palm on her notebook, opens to the folded 9 line, and pulls a slow breath of 4 counts in and 4 out. The hiss of radios shrinks a little as her pulse finds the metronome she trusts. Heat presses against the T-walls and keeps the room tight and bright. She does not grab a handset. She builds the picture instead, the way a joint terminal attack controller does when seconds matter. The special instructions guide a clean initial point or battle position and a safe final attack heading that avoids the village on the west edge. Egress goes northeast to clear the power lines that cross the road like snare wire. Her pencil finds the convoy and the threat in military grid reference system and links them with a short arrow that shows intent. Friendlies sit 200 meters west of the road, and the estimate is honest and tight. She writes the abort code for the day in the lower corner where her eye cannot miss it. The steady act of writing turns the noise into something she can use. Airspace is next. She scans the airspace control order and the special instructions together, and looks for conflict with the medical evacuation orbit. Altitude blocks are solid on paper, but paper is not the sky. So she marks a caution star where the orbits could converge. If the enemy closes, she knows the call will be type 1, and that will demand eyes, angles, and a readback that leaves no doubt. Primary net pops with a wrong readback on line 6 and an unsafe restriction thrown in by habit. In her head, she says the phrase that stops guns when grids turn slippery, and she waits. Rank and roles still matter, and her lane is real. So, she lifts her chin and asks the officer in charge for permission to assume control of the close air support net for the convoy. Her voice is even and free of hurry. A runner breaks the aisle with a short report that the forward joint terminal attack controller is intermittent and requests support from the operations center. The officer nods once, and the weight passes to her station without ceremony. Harper answers with a calm acknowledgement and sets her hand near the push to talk without touching it yet. Pace is already written and ready to go live. She will shift the room with cadence, not volume. Alternate by satellite will come first. Then a clear path to contingency on link 16 or saddle if the ground picture starts to slide. Emergency stays as a runner and the red phone because sometimes wires beat air. Her breath holds steady and the net begins to lean toward order. Authority passes and the room feels it like a change in weather. Harper Cooper moves at once and turns plan into action with the pace she wrote on the board. Primary on very high frequency and ultra high frequency is overloaded. So she calls for disciplined silence and holds it for a beat. Alternate goes live on satellite through the PRC 117 Golf with the preset she checked at 7:15 a.m. Stations shift without drama and confirm with short call signs that stack cleanly. Primary falls to a quiet guard and the floor noise drops. She standardizes control in simple steps that sound like a metronome. Hog. 21. Flight of A. 10 Charlie checks in with playtime. Ordnance. And sensor status. And waits for direction. Harper sets type 1 in effect and asks them to advise when ready for 9 line. She warns that danger close is possible because friendlies are 200 meters west of the road and the threat is pressing. Rules of engagement are restated in plain terms that shape what will follow. Positive identification will be established before any clearance, and no step will jump the sequence. She lays out the plan in clear blocks that match the day's orders. Final attack heading will avoid the village that sits tight on the west edge of the road. Egress will go to the northeast to clear the power lines that slice the corridor like wire. Medical evacuation remains on the outer ring, with a separate altitude block per the airspace control order, and will not cross the attack geometry. For a moment, the old weight tugs at her. The medical profile that parked her at a desk makes a last quiet argument for caution. If she hides behind that story, people on the road will pay for it. So she chooses the risk that belongs to her rank and the authority she was given. The cadence in her voice steadies the room, and the radios take that shape. Net discipline settles into the level needed for real work. Harper confirms that commander initials for any danger close will be collected and logged before clearance. She cues a talk on using terrain features that every driver can see and notes the abort code for the day where her eye cannot miss it. The room holds a useful silence and waits to move when she says the word. Harper Cooper shifts from gathering nets to directing fires with no wasted motion. Her voice sets a steady rhythm that the room begins to mirror without thinking. She frames the close air support 9 line in clean order and guides everyone to a shared picture. The heat outside feels distant now because the cadence inside takes over. She builds the brief in full. Initial point or battle position is selected to the east with a simple run in that avoids clutter. Heading and distance are set for a clean approach. And target elevation is confirmed off the sheet she prepared at 7:15 a.m. Target description focuses on a PKM or RPG team dug along a brick wall that flanks the road. Target location lands in military grid reference system as 38 Sierra Mike Bravo 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. Mark will be smoke based on light conditions, with a reminder to avoid masking the friendlies. Friendlies sit 200 meters west of the target. An egress will go northeast to clear the power lines and keep the village out of the arc. Remarks include final attack heading 090 through 120, danger close, the day's abort code, and a laser code if the plan shifts to designator use. She requires readbacks for the critical lines. Line 4 for elevation. Line 6 for location. And every restriction tied to the shot. Talk on uses plain ground truth that any driver can see, like the hard bend in the main supply route, a roof of corrugated tin, and a bare patch of dirt just south of the wall. Airspace stays clean under the special instructions and the airspace control order. And the medical evacuation orbit holds an outer ring that will not cut across the attack geometry. A ground voice slips a grid that swaps Mike Bravo with November Bravo and swings the fight by 100 kilometers. Harper cuts the motion with 2 words that live in her bones and halts all fires in her head. Then calls for a full confirmation of friendly position and distance. The correction snaps into place and the picture locks. No one breathes until the readback is perfect. Positive identification is solid and the attack angles are safe. So, she grants clearance as Type 1, with danger close authorized and the ground force commander initials logged. She restates final attack heading and egress and waits for the last check to land. Hog 21 from the A-10 Charlie flight rolls in and lines the pass with care. The radio clicks feel like a heartbeat the whole room shares. The gun speaks as GAU 830mm and the sound tears the air like dry thunder. Dust lifts from the wall and then slumps. And the alley that once flashed with fire turns flat and still. Harper holds the net steady and collects effects with the same calm tempo she began with. The battle damage assessment is concise. Good effects on target. No movement east of the road. And every face in the room carries the same quiet surprise that the admin sergeant just ran the kill chain like a master. The first pass lands, and the enemy fire thins to scattered bursts. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, the noise shifts from frantic to purposeful. Staff Sergeant Harper Cooper keeps net discipline with short, steady calls. She asks for battle damage assessment in clean terms, and the room responds to the rhythm. She places Hog 22 to the east and holds it inside the 12 to 14,000 altitude block that matches the special instructions and the airspace control order. Hog 21 remains on call in a separate block to reduce stack friction. Final attack heading stays inside 090 to 120 to keep the village off the nose. Egress remains to the northeast, where the power lines do not cut the climb. A small error pops on the ground when the convoy throws the wrong smoke color. Harper fixes it before confusion grows and tells them to use white smoke to mark the north edge of the wall. She reminds them that the friendlies sit 200 meters west of the road and that every mark needs to protect that fact. The next report comes crisp and aligned. She watches the attack geometry the way a pilot watches a crosswind. Power lines hide part of the approach and could pull the eye during the run-in. She orders an offset of 5 degrees for the next pass to clear the wires and keep the sensors happy. The change looks small on the board and large in safety. Her voice stays short and clear and respects the chain of command. The battle captain updates the status board to her cadence, and the officer in charge listens, confirms, and allows the flow to work. Restrictions are repeated in the same clean order every time. The rules of engagement are honored without slowing the tempo. The floor of the room settles. Radios hold a useful silence between calls, and only the needed words appear. Airspace remains deconflicted, and pace sits ready to catch any slip. People move with intent because the cadence tells them when to act. By the close of the sequence, the shift in status is obvious to everyone present. The person many called the admin sergeant is now the tactical lead by virtue of skill. The net follows competence, and competence wears her name. The team feels the relief that comes when precision replaces noise, and the mission stays inside the lines that keep people alive. Enemy fire drops to a nervous trickle and the window opens. Staff Sergeant Harper Cooper lays out a high-risk escape that lives inside the rules and the sky. She assigns Hog 22 to run a show of force down the road to crush morale. Hog 21 holds on call with GAU 830mm if targets reappear. She repeats the safe final attack, heading of 090 to 120, and keeps egress to the northeast to miss the village and the power lines. Altitude blocks stay clean under the special instructions and the airspace control order. Hog 22 owns 12 to 14,000, and Hog 21 waits in a separate slice to avoid stack friction. The medical evacuation orbit keeps an outer ring with no crossing paths. On the ground, she directs the convoy to throw smoke for concealment, set covering fire from the rear vehicle, and form a recovery team. The plan is simple and exact. Hook the disabled truck and drag it back about 30 meters to open a lane. Every step stays timed to the air picture above. Wind shifts across the concrete and moves the first veil of smoke sideways. Harper calls for a 5-degree offset on the next run to protect friendlies 200 meters west of the target. She watches the plumes build and counts the beats until the cover is thick. The mark will come when the wind steadies and the smoke holds. The net tightens as Hog 22 checks in for the show of force. The room in the operations center holds a collective breath while the convoy edges its wheels into motion. Engines rise. Rifles speak in short, disciplined bursts, and the cable on the tow hook snaps tight. For a few seconds, the plan is as fragile as glass. A flash kicks from the wall and looks like a rocket-propelled grenade. Hog 21 is already in from the east, on the correct heading. Harper confirms positive identification and all restrictions, then clears Type 1 when every box is true. The GAU-8 speaks like dry thunder, and the wall slumps into dust. Silence follows in the alley, and the convoy drags the disabled rig enough to open the path. Trucks surge through the gap and race out of the kill zone along the planned axis. Hog 21 and Hog 22 hold overwatch until the vehicles are clear and the threat map cools. Harper collects battle damage assessment with the same even tone as before. Good effects on target. No movement east of the road. Friendly losses, minor, and treated. She writes the facts in the log and lets her hand fall from the folded 9-line card. A slow breath of 4 counts in and 4 out resets the room. Around her, the air finally exhales and understands that disciplined procedure just pulled everyone past the blade. The Tactical Operations Center breathes again as the convoy clears the last checkpoint. Screens dim slightly, and the siren memory fades to a dull echo. Voices drop to normal, and chairs slide back into their grooves. The room remembers the calm it knew before noon. Staff Sergeant Harper Cooper conducts the handover with quiet precision. She reads back battle damage assessment, lists munitions expended, and marks the timeline from first contact to exit. Notes on the rules of engagement go into the log where they belong. Control moves back to the forward joint terminal attack controller, now that the link is steady. The officer in charge, an O3, steps over and offers a brief acknowledgement that lands with weight. The battle captain updates the status board to reflect the final reports. Around them, the crew shifts from clenched focus to measured relief. The air feels wider inside the T-walls. Harper sets her notebook down and closes the cover. The folded 9-line card lies flat at last, like a kept promise. Her breath returns to a slow 4-count in and out. Radios settle into a true silence that sounds like a clean sheet of paper. A corner of the past opens just enough to explain the present. There was a blast once that led to a medical profile and a seat at a desk. The skills never left. So she built a habit of checklists to hold her center when alarms tried to pull it apart. For a second, she hears her heartbeat ride the last thread of static, and then vanish. A junior leans close with a simple question about the wrong grid she caught so fast. Harper answers without drama. 1 digit can kill a friend. So, check fire until it is right. The message lands the way a good lesson does. Plain and unforgettable. The officer in charge lays out a path forward. Reinstatement to Joint Terminal Attack Controller duties can be considered, or a slot at the Air Support Operations Center if that fits better. The choice belongs to her. She nods once and lets the idea rest. Heat shimmers beyond the open door and turns the motor pool to water. The generator hum runs even and steady like a long runway. Harper allows a small smile as the world clicks back into routine. No applause follows. Only the quiet recognition that competence carries its own light. The Tactical Operations Center rests in an earned hush. A folded 9-line card sleeps inside a closed notebook. Its edges softened by real work. Radio static that once clawed at nerves now sits in memory as a steady cadence that people can follow. Outside the doorway, heat shimmer plays over concrete and turns the motor pool into a gentle mirage. Hold 3 images as the light settles. The 9-line that keeps hands honest when stress climbs. The static that becomes rhythm when a calm voice takes the net. The wavering air that reminds us clarity can exist inside the hottest day if someone chooses discipline and patience. Carry a question home tonight. When orders hold you and instinct pulls you forward and lives perch on that thin line. What guides your choice? Rank can shape duty, and habit can steady motion. Yet, it is disciplined judgment that blends both into one right act. Think of the quiet person on your team who turns noise into action and fear into pace. If that person comes to mind, share this story with them. Leave a comment about the day you watched discipline protect a life. Whether on a road in southern Iraq or inside a workplace far from any flight line, follow this channel for more true-paced moments where a steady cadence changes outcomes. Add your experience so the next person can learn how calm holds when pressure rises. We keep the military details correct because accuracy is a form of respect. A 9-line is a lifeline. And a clean readback is a safeguard. Procedures are not cold when they protect people and bring them home. Let the room breathe again at 2:30 p.m. Find your own 4-count. And carry that rhythm back to your team so the quiet keeps saving lives.